If our estimate is right that there's thousands of unmarked graves of World War I veterans, I think we're going to be really busy in the future.
Unbeknownst to me, the Headstone Project was looking for my uncle, great uncle John Frederick William Matz. He was a soldier in the trenches, you know.
It was my grandfather on my dad's side, Archie McVicker.
The Headstone Project is a group of volunteers that seeks to locate and identify the final resting place of veterans from World War I that are currently in unmarked graves. And where we locate these graves and verify the service credentials of the veteran, we then erect a monument to honour his service to Australia in war.
He died in 1941 after World War I and left behind a wife with 5 children and pregnant with number 6. So my dad was 2 years old when his father passed away.
He got married when he got back from the war in 1919, and his wife left him. I think he might have had in those days PTSD, but nobody knew what PTSD was back then, and he didn't have any children.
So what the research and investigation team do is firstly we look for World War I veterans buried in unmarked graves throughout South Australia. Secondly, once we find them, we then have to confirm that they are in fact the actual person in the grave. And thirdly, we then have to research their military history to make sure they meet our criteria and that of the Australian Office of Australian War Graves. And then the biggest task then is to look for living descendants or relatives to speak to them about what the project intends to do. Right, so my name's Ian Hopley and I am the Research and Investigation Manager for the Headstone Project at South Australia.
So Ian was at a dead end to find a relative, and so he was pleased to find me and I was pleased to find Ian. So that's how it all happened for me. Yeah.
My name's Netta.
I'm John Brownlee. I'm President of the Headstone Project here in South Australia. When we got this, you know, it was just a blessing, an absolute blessing.
So when SCF were approached about getting a container for us, that's fantastic because it involves the community. We have so many people in the community who are supportive of what we do. When we find relatives, descendants of these veterans that we're looking for, we just find that community support is essential, and the fact that SCF has been able to help us, just being able to contain all our gear in one spot, makes our job so much easier and so much more fulfilling when we have this support from the community. We do make a point when we do identify a relative to do a grave that we do not ask them for any money whatsoever, that they're not expected to contribute to what we're doing. And so sometimes we get people who will give us donations, and again, corporate organisations have been very generous in the past.
My name's Geraldine Cox. My dad was the last of his siblings that was alive, and he had no idea it was happening until it kind of happened. So for my dad to be able to go and say kind of his farewells to his father was really, really emotional.
We'd like to get in touch with you because we think they found a relative of yours. So I said, oh wow, this is awesome, because because I'd been investigating our family history. It's just been fabulous. And we went to the actual commemoration in Gawler, and they had the national anthem and the last post, and it was so moving to actually for him to be remembered when we'd all forgotten. We didn't even know he was alive, and then he was there.
It was great that our kids could be involved in it. So even though none of us had ever met Archie, because as I said, my dad was 2, so there was not one living relative that had ever met him, how it drew everybody together was unbelievable. We had about 40 family members that travelled from all over Australia to turn up on that day. So it was just like a big family reunion that, you know, you don't normally get to have. But at the same time, putting somebody to proper rest with all these people, it was great. It was an absolutely brilliant day.
I spoke to Ian and John, and I became an investigator. And it is just one of the most rewarding things I have ever done. It's just been fabulous. I've found families, I've found soldiers, I've found, actually the last soldier I found actually knew the guy who was the relative of the soldier. It was quite amazing.
We had a man who enlisted and went overseas where they discovered that he had heart disease, and so they turned him around and sent him back from Egypt. So he got back to Australia and he just walked around the corner and re-enlisted, which is what he did. And the second trip he made, he got to England before they discovered the heart disease. And over the course of 2 wars, he enlisted 10 times, but he only served a total of 151 days. And most of that was on ships going to and from the Northern Hemisphere.
Just recently I found one gentleman who was 53 when he signed up. He went to war with his son, who was 21, and they both came home. They're both buried in Angaston, next to each other, yeah.
For us, it was amazing. As I said, we got together about a man that none of us knew, with some people that we did know, but it's all the people that we also got to know because of it. So yeah, it's well worth getting involved in.
We run at a strike rate at the moment of about 97%. It may not be a direct lineal descendant, but it could be a great niece, great nephew, great niece, nephew. It could be a cousin, but you know, we do tend to find someone eventually.
So if anybody can do anything really we need admin, we need tech support, we need volunteers to, you know, hand out pamphlets at the ceremonies that we do. And most people that I talk to, when I tell them what I do as a volunteer, they go, oh, wow, that'd be amazing. And I go, well, yeah, it is.
I think we're getting probably 1 new inquiry every week. And so there's an awful lot got to be done. And if our estimate is right, that there's thousands of unmarked graves of World War I veterans, I think we're going to be really busy in the future. And, you know, we just hope this project can be ongoing because we think these guys deserve it.
If ever anybody's ever talking to anybody and they have a relative that they don't know anything about, contact the Headstone Project because we'll find them. If we can, we'll find them.
A bit of closure, you know, as I said, to see the closure in my father before he passed away was just great. I don't think he knew how much he needed to have that.
You know, now I can go to the cemetery and visit my great-grandfather and my great-uncle and he's there. So that's been, it's very rewarding.
I think for my dad and watching these kids walk up to my dad and ask him to autograph something so that they had a piece of history or it was, yeah, it was very emotional. I think it was really emotional for him, but it was excellent.